Diddy is a drug dealer, and so is Jay-Z. The proof is there. How many up people does he have to be around before people see him for who he is? Everybody knew. That's why I couldn't really watch that documentary, because half of the people that was in there, I can't believe he did it. Nigga, you used to go get the too. I watched you, dog. I watched y'all make these deals. Don't nobody want to talk about Aaliyah.
He's doing everything that he can do to play both sides against the middle, to make sure that Diddy goes down and he stays clean.
Netflix just dropped a huge documentary on Diddy, and a lot of people immediately noticed that Jaguar Wright, who's been exposing Diddy for years, was nowhere in it. But now, Jaguar is finally breaking down why she thinks she was left out, and honestly, her explanation lines up a lot with how Netflix built this whole documentary.
You have to start asking yourself questions after being in this business for this long. If you're a halfway intelligent person, when do you start questioning how lucky some keep getting?
Jaguar Wright came up in the early 2000s, during a time when neo-soul was blowing up. If you remember that era, you know the scene. Jill Scott, Erykah Badu, D'Angelo, The Roots, that was the circle. And Jaguar wasn't just a fan watching from the outside. She was on the road with The Roots, performing live, doing shows, and putting out real albums. Jaguar's background proves she didn't just hear about the things happening in the industry. She was watching the culture shift from the inside. She's not an outsider guessing how things worked. She saw what she saw because she was standing in the rooms where it happened.
Like most of the shit that I saw, I was in a position where I was forced to see some things. I had to learn how to live with it. Yeah, I can make fun of it. Shit, some days I had to, just to get through it.
When she says she toured with The Roots, that alone tells you she wasn't new to the industry. Touring with a group like that gives you access to circles most people never see. It puts you around managers, label reps, promoters, other artists, executives, and all the personalities that shape the industry.
If you go back and look at everything that's being exposed, I think it would be fair to say that if albums had to be guaranteed cruelty-free, 75% of most music wouldn't even come out.
Now here's where things get even more interesting. Jaguar has said many times that she watched the industry shift when Diddy rose to power. She wasn't in New York with Diddy every day, but she was close enough to the industry machine to see how people reacted when his name came up, how events were run, how parties started to change, and how people moved around him.
He was selected to be the demon that he is, to keep the culture in line so the industry could continue to rape it for all of its precious jewels. We have too many lost. The list of lost is ridiculous, and everyone knows Diddy was selected for this job.
So when Jaguar speaks on Diddy, or the industry around him, it is different from someone who only knows the surface. She was watching the rise of the exact culture that Netflix claims to expose in their documentary. And for years, she was vocal about the things she saw and the things she believed were happening behind the scenes.
I think everybody that knows Sean Carter knows that he will slump anyone in any relationship for $1.
And that's why people expected to see her in Netflix's documentary. Because think about it, Jaguar has been one of the earliest voices calling out the power structure around Diddy. She didn't start talking about this last month. She didn't wake up in 2024 and decided to speak.
I can't wait for everybody to find out what's really been going on in the background.
She's been warning people for years that something wasn't right. So for a lot of viewers, when they saw Netflix drop a huge documentary about Diddy and didn't include her, the question was simple: why not? If she was one of the first, why was her voice missing? If she had seen things with her own eyes, why wasn't she interviewed? If she had spent years talking about the culture Netflix now claims to expose, where was she? That's why this question keeps coming up. The documentary talked about people who were close to Diddy, people who worked with him, people who partied around him, and people who were hurt by him. But Jaguar's voice, which had been public for so long, was nowhere in sight. And this is exactly why viewers expected her to be front and center in Netflix's doc. So why wasn't she? Well, let's slow things down and talk through what Jaguar actually said in her recent live stream. Because she was talking like a person who's tired, frustrated, and honestly just fed up with being ignored.
You know, he's the devil. He has bewitched people, he has tricked people, he has done all kinds of things. And I've watched what his influence has done.
One of the clearest things she says is that she's tired of being called a liar. She feels like every time she opens her mouth, people start laughing at her, calling her crazy, or treating her like she's making things up.
I get called a bunch of liars. People tell me that I'm wrong about everything, and It's just kind of wild.
So, when this new documentary dropped and went straight into topics she's been talking about for years, she felt mocked. She even calls it a mockumentary. Not because the documentary itself is fake, but because she feels like they basically repeated her claims without giving her the respect of letting her speak. To her, it feels like she warned everybody, and instead of listening to her, folks waited for a camera crew and a Netflix logo before they took anything seriously.
I know plenty of people that talked to him, and they were wrong.
Jaguar even says the documentary took her talking points, turned them into polished scenes, and left her out on purpose. In her mind, Netflix didn't just ignore her. They pretended her voice never mattered. She believes the doc made Diddy the villain, but didn't touch the rest of the machine. And because she talks about the whole industry, she thinks that's the real reason she wasn't included.
Like, that's the other thing that's wild. Like, this documentary, Little Rod ain't been sharing none of his receipts, none of his recordings, nothing with nobody.
According to her, Diddy is sitting in federal custody, working in the kitchen at what she calls Fort Dix Federal. She even jokes about him getting hugged by the other inmates.
He's in Fort Dix. Federal, working in the kitchen, getting hugs from, fellow inmates.
For her, this isn't about clowning him. She actually sees it as justice by God.
Once upon a time, people told me that nothing would ever happen to Diddy. Diddy would never go to jail. He would never be taken into account. Nothing would ever happen. And every day he sits in that jail, it is God saying, I did this. Because only God can do what no man can.
Jaguar also brings up something that definitely made people blink. She suggests that 50 Cent didn't step deeper into the Diddy case because he's a federal informant, allegedly.
I don't know why they allow Curtis Jackson to play in everyone's face. I don't know. Maybe it's because he's a federal informant, allegedly. I don't know.
Again, these are her words, not verified facts. But this thing shows how she views the industry. She thinks everyone is working angles and nobody is clean. Jaguar also speaks on Aubrey O'Day. She says Aubrey had an affidavit that explained she was laced up and misbehaved by a security guard. Jaguar feels like Aubrey's story should have been front and center, not something lightly touched on.
The affidavit states that she was out of it. She was whacked out. She was laced up. And she was getting double teamed. And the woman said it's by someone that she thinks is security.
Then she talks about Lil Rod, the producer suing Diddy. She says she doesn't understand why he continued to work for Diddy after he allegedly witnessed a shooting in the studio.
Little Rod was in the studio and heard the pow pow go off and sat there and tried to close off the holes where the liquid DNA, the red juice was pouring out of this guy named G, and he's sitting there trying to keep the guy alive, and it drug him outside and all of that. He's got film of red human juice all in the bathroom, and he continued to keep working. And he stayed with Diddy for like a year after that.
And again, she says she's grateful Diddy is in custody. She calls it a timeout. She believes God put him there because human systems failed.
Billionaires don't go to jail, baby. Ever. Which means if a billionaire's in jail, it's because that's where God wants him. Why do you think I said God? Why do you think I say stuff like God said no? Because God is the only one that could possibly have the amount of power that can put a billionaire on his ass.
Jaguar also talks about Kim Porter. She says Kim knew everything about the tapes, the parties, the men, the props. She says Kim had more leverage over Diddy than Cassie ever did.
She knew about the butt plugs. She knew about the man-on-man action. She knew about the tapes. Kim knew everything. Why do you think she had to go? Because she was the one woman in his life that knew where all of the bombs were buried, and she could have blown every last one of them up one by one.
Then she plays what she claims is a recording of Diddy talking about controlling the media. In the clip, he talks about propaganda and influencing the narrative before he went into custody. Jaguar says this shows he was planning a media war. Let's break this down simply because once you understand what Netflix was actually doing, you can see where the mismatch happened. The new documentary titled The Reckoning didn't try to cover everything about Diddy's life or even everything the industry knew about him. They picked one lane and stayed in that lane the whole time. And that lane was legally documented cases.
I believe Cassie's a victim in all this because She came in as such, she's like 18, like 19 years old. In the very beginning, after a while, over time, you condition for it.
Netflix kept the story focused on the people whose stories were already backed by lawsuits, sworn statements, or public legal filings. Cassie, Joy Dickerson, Lil Rod, Aubrey O'Day. Every single person they featured had either filed a lawsuit, given a sworn statement, or had documented evidence attached to their claims. That wasn't a coincidence. Netflix knows Diddy's team is quick with legal threats. They know how fast he sends cease and desist letters. His lawyers were already trying to shut down the doc before it even aired. So Netflix had to pick stories that could survive legal threats. They needed bulletproof examples of Diddy's behavior. That's also why they used only certain kinds of evidence. They showed lawsuit settlement documents. They referenced court filings. They used police reports. They pulled things from official records that had been investigated, filed, or discussed publicly in legal settings. Basically, if the proof wasn't tied to a courtroom document, Netflix didn't touch it, not even with a long stick. They kept the whole thing clean, simple, and legally safe. And that's where Jaguar's absence starts to make sense. Because her story isn't just about Diddy. Her truth is bigger and wider than that. She talks about the whole industry, not just one man.
Jay-Z is setting Diddy up. Why is everyone having such a hard time? He ain't doing shit different.
If you've ever watched even one of Jaguar's interviews, you already know she doesn't talk like someone trying to sound perfect. She talks like someone who's been carrying stories around for years and finally hit the point where she's not holding anything back anymore. And that's important for this whole mystery of why she wasn't in Netflix's documentary.
It's time for Fatima Robinson to speak up about what she heard on that phone. It's time for somebody to be honest about who gave Aaliyah the pills that knocked her out before she was carried onto a plane she didn't want to be on.
So picture this. Most people who speak out in these documentaries talk in a calm way, right? Every sentence feels like it got approved by a lawyer before it even left their mouth. But Jaguar, she's the opposite. She tells you exactly what she saw and exactly how it made her feel. She doesn't sugarcoat anything. And whether you like her or not, that rawness is exactly why people listen to her.
What they did to that woman, she was amazing. Aaliyah was amazing.
Yeah, she really
If she
was.
had been alive now, there's a lot of people that wouldn't have jobs. Funny how that worked out for some people.
Now let's make this simple, because this is exactly where most people get confused. When a streaming giant like Netflix makes a doc about someone as powerful as Diddy, they can't use anything that isn't backed by strong evidence. I'm talking about police reports, court filings, sworn statements, lawsuits. Because once you're dealing with billionaires and their lawyers, everything has to be legally safe. And Jaguar is not that. She tells stories about Diddy, but she also talks about the whole system around him. She'll mention 10 different celebrities in one interview. She'll jump from talking about Clive Davis to Jay-Z to Beyonce to Diddy to Mary J. Blige. And she makes these connections that she believes in because she lived around these people and saw how things worked. But legally, if Netflix wants to use even one sentence from her, they have to verify every single name, every single event, every single detail. And if even one thing can't be confirmed, the whole documentary becomes a legal nightmare.
Because I think if a victim comes out against Usher, it'll show how egregious this shit is. Because if he can be a predator, then anybody can be a predator.
All right, now if you want to understand why Netflix didn't include her, this story is the clearest example. So Jaguar went on Piers Morgan's show. And if you know anything about Piers Morgan, you know he loves chaos, but he also loves staying protected. He'll stir the pot, but he's not trying to get sued for stirring it. Jaguar was invited to talk about Diddy, plain and simple. That's what the show was expecting. But Jaguar being Jaguar, she didn't stick to that. She went beyond Diddy. She mentioned Jay-Z, she mentioned Beyonce, and she didn't say light stuff. She said things that would make anyone in a legal department stand up straight.
I have 3 victims right now who are willing to give testimony about not only what Mr. Carter has done to them, but his wife as well. They're a nasty little couple. They do nasty things.
After her appearance, Jay-Z and Beyonce's legal team contacted the show immediately, and Piers had to respond. He had to apologize publicly, not for having her on the show, but because of what she said. He had to cut entire parts of the interview by legal demand.
Well, Jaguar Wright unexpectedly made several serious allegations about Jay-Z and Beyonce during that interview. As I said in the moment, they were not present to respond or defend themselves, but now they have. Their lawyers contacted us to say that those claims were totally false and have no basis in fact, and we've therefore complied with the legal request to cut them from the original interview.
This is the proof. This is the moment that shows what happens when Jaguar speaks in a space that has corporate rules. Her words bring lawyers And if Piers Morgan, of all people, had to go into damage control mode, imagine what Netflix saw. They were already getting hit with threats from Diddy's team before the documentary even dropped. They already knew people were ready to take them to court. So the last thing they wanted was someone who could accidentally drag even more powerful names into the mix.
From the second that I did Piers Morgan, they've been trying to convince people that I had something to do with these girls. Because when I was on Piers Morgan, I said I had 3 victims that were ready to come forward. The problem is I didn't say I had Diddy victims. I said I have 3 victims against the Carters. That's not Diddy.
So before we go any deeper into motives or theories, let's slow down and look at what actually sits in front of us. Because honestly, nothing in this story makes sense until you understand what the documentary really shows and why it matters.
Cameras. He was filming his most intimate moments, allegedly, with these freak-offs, right? Revealing his true self and the most, aggressive side of himself.
The first thing that jumps out is how recent this footage is. Diddy was still filming himself just days before his arrest, and not in a casual way. He brought cameras into private strategy meetings. He recorded himself while lawyers were talking. He allowed someone else to stand there and capture moments that no one in his position should ever record.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business. We're losing.
This wasn't old archived footage. This was almost real-time material from a man walking straight toward a legal disaster. And somehow, that footage ended up in the hands of 50 Cent, the one person on earth who has been calling him out for 20 years. You don't need a conspiracy board or red yarn to see why people froze when they saw that. Even Diddy's own spokesman called it a deeply concerning situation. But when you actually watch the clips, the worry makes sense. He's talking like someone who wants better people to clean up the smoke trailing behind him. And then there's the lawyer situation. This is the part that floored a lot of viewers.
We have to find somebody that'll work with us that has dealt in the dirtiest of dirty business. We're losing.
At one point, a lawyer actually tells him on camera, "You shouldn't be recording this. That alone tells you everything." If your own lawyer is warning you on tape that the tape itself shouldn't exist, the damage is already done. Attorney-client privilege only exists when the conversation stays private. The moment you bring a camera into it, especially with another person holding that camera, the protection goes out the window. Legally, that's like handing over the keys to your own safe and saying,
"Listen to me. I'm gonna get off the phone right now, and I am gonna let you professionals look at the situation and come back to me with a solution. No matter what nobody said. Let's just here and there, y'all are not working together the right way. We're losing."
Don't look inside. You also see Diddy bossing around his legal team. He tells them they aren't working together the right way and that they're losing the fight. He's snapping directions like he's in a boardroom. It's the kind of tone that makes you wonder whether he saw his lawyers as advisors or as employees who needed to follow his vision. And again, all of this is on video. Then the tone shifts in a completely different direction when you see him interact with fans in Harlem.
Hands.
I'll accept it.
But the moment he gets in the car, the smile drops, and he says he needs a bath because he's been amongst people.
Hand sanitizer. Hold on. I got it. I've been out in the streets amongst the people. Yeah, I gotta take a bath. Like the amount of people that actually I'm coming in contact with, like that's what I have to do. You know what I'm saying? It's like 150 hugs.
This clip is so accurate because it shows a gap between the public face and the private mindset. Moments like that reveal character more than any scandal ever could. And while all of this is happening, 50 Cent is busy explaining why he wanted this documentary made.
If Sean Combs watches this, what do you think he's gonna feel?
Like, wow, this is amazing. I think he's gonna say this is the best documentary I've seen in a long time. Because you'll see people saying that. I mean, he may feel a different way about pieces and bits of it, but he knows the truth.
The documentary also includes Lil Rod's footage, which paints a different kind of picture. His voice notes show Diddy manipulating people. There's even a moment where he gives Christina Karam a soft-spoken threat, and then there's Diddy's own defense. One moment catches him explaining his actions by saying, "Cassie was mean to me, so she deserved the punishment." No matter where you stand on this entire story, that line is impossible to ignore. It shows a man who sees his behavior as justified.
You got a Diddy victim, you got a Jay-Z victim, and you got a superstar gone. They know what happened, and yet they had to sit there and have that conversation like they didn't know who did it.
Now that we've heard Jaguar's side and we've gone through everything the documentary actually showed, this is the part where everything finally snaps into place. And once you line up the documentary choices with Jaguar's explanation, you start seeing the same pattern forming from two different angles. Let's start with the most obvious thing. Netflix kept the story small on purpose. They had hours of footage. But even with all that, the documentary stayed laser focused on one person. There were no side stories about the industry, no big picture breakdown of who else was involved with him, no hints at other celebs who might have known something. And that, right there, is exactly the kind of thing Jaguar was talking about. She said Netflix wasn't trying to expose the real culprits. The doc was a controlled burn, meant to take down Diddy without letting the flames spread to everyone around him. And when you watch the series with that thought in mind, it suddenly makes sense. Because even in the most controversial scenes, the producers chose to go quiet whenever the story pointed in a wider direction. But what you guys think? Do you buy Jaguar's explanation? Does it make sense to you that she was left out because her stories go wider than Netflix wanted? Or do you think Netflix just played it safe and kept the documentary tight to avoid any trouble? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I will see you in the next video.